Robert F. Williams. Who is he? Well, let's go back. Slavery is a system under which people are treated as property to be bought and sold, and they were forced to work with no salary. This was legal over 100 years ago, yet people of color are still slaves. Slavery was present in the 18th and 19th century. It took many years to overcome this horrible act. It took battles, tears, and blood to gain change. Laws may have been replaced, but are they enforced? Throughout the past years, our ancestors have marched, chanted, and cried, and overcame many triumphs. Yet racism and discrimination are present today in the year of 2014. People of color are slaves to money, technology, and have lacking communication skills. The African Americans continue to live in the slums because they are brought into that habitat at a young age and scared of change. But they continue to complain about their situation. Instead of complaining, make change and make oneself better. The civil rights movement was an example of change because the black community stood together and made programs to empower one another. The community made sure that there was education, food, and knowledge of one's rights for everyone. Activists such as Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and Rosa Parks are always being taught of how they empowered the black community in schools. But what about Robert Franklin Williams? Malcolm X was always talking about how he has been so violent, but he really wasn't. He was very intelligent. And we marched to Washington, D.C. to state our change. But what about Robert Franklin Williams? Do you even know who this man is? Robert Franklin Williams was an inspirational activist for many African Americans. He was born and raised in Monroe, North Carolina. Williams was influenced by both parents, Emma Carter and John Williams, to follow his dreams and get all the education that he can to become successful. Robert Franklin Williams was also told by his grandmother, a former slave, to stand for his rights, and also gave Williams his first gun at 11 years old. Throughout his years, Williams dealt with racism, discrimination, and poverty. As he was told, he stood up for himself by any means necessary, like using the gun. Even when his teacher told him he could not become a lawyer, Williams chose to prove his teacher wrong by helping gain equality for all African Americans through the power of justice and togetherness, something a lawyer could never do during that time. During the 1950s through the 1960s, Robert Williams became a member of the NAACP to become a worldwide activist for African Americans to spread equality and receive full citizenships for all blacks. He then led the secret group called the Black Guard to receive rifles from the National Rifle Association. This led the NAACP to let go of Williams from the organization. Years after, his dangerous actions caused him to be exiled of the United States, where he moved to Cuba. While in Cuba, Williams had a radio show called Radio Free Dixie to urge blacks soldiers in the U.S. Armed Forces, where they were preparing for the possible invasion of Cuba, to engage the insurrection against the United States. During his stay in Cuba, Mabel and Robert Williams published a newspaper called The Crusader. Williams then wrote his book, Negroes with Guns, in Cuba. Once his work was done, Williams and his wife left Cuba and settled in China, where he was there received. After helping China, he moved back to the United States. Williams was suspected by the Justice Department of wanting to fill the vacuum of influence left after the assassination of his friends Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. As the stress increased, Williams got very ill and died from cancer on October 15, 1996. Robert Williams was a strong inspirational worldwide. Williams was an example of people who never gave up on equality. He showed that even though the obstacles came his way, he still fought for what was right. Although the consequences were bad at that time, The outcome was the biggest impact. Williams made sure that he met his goal and create equality for all. Robert Williams was a true inspiration for all and made change. And so should you, to avoid making the remaking of the past. You make your change.